This is Dr. Blake Jones. Thank you for joining us today on the Guided Podcast. Today I'm joined by a man who I've known for a very long time, Anthony Delimpo. We've walked a lot of road together in this world. I've known you for probably, I was thinking last night, probably 25 years. You were my neighbor in the little town where we lived probably 25 years ago. We've just kind of known each other on and off all of those years. You are my client in my counseling practice, and for all my counseling friends who are watching that, I just want to, up front, I want to say, Anthony, you've given me complete and total permission to share your story, and it's an amazing story, which is why I wanted you to come on this podcast and talk about that, but I kind of wanted to get that out of the way, the confidentiality thing. But thank you for joining me today. So good to see you.
I'm very glad to be here.
Yeah.
I appreciate you having me.
So let's jump into your story. You were a police officer for a long time, and I want you to talk with me about kind of what drew you to law enforcement initially. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like most kids growing up, at least most kids now, don't really know what you want to do or where you're going to go. My parents were both in the medical field, and I had good grades and was pretty studious. And thought that's where I was drawn to. My parents kind of had guided me into that area. And, I was in college. It was my freshman year, walking back from a biology class, and walked into the dorm room and saw 9/11 kind of unfold right before our eyes, with the RD standing there and everybody surrounded. Mm-hmm. And, at that time I was in pre-med, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I kind of had a desire to help people. But watch the fire trucks and watch the police cars and watch everybody running to help. And I thought, that's what I want to do. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm called. Yeah. And so over the course of the next year and a half, I switched my major to criminal justice, and then graduated and applied to several police departments and was hired in Lexington. Yeah. Yeah. And you worked your way up through the ranks of the Lexington. You were a patrol officer for a while, right? And a detective, I believe. I was. Yeah. How was that just emotionally for you to be a police officer? I do a lot of work with first responders, mental health work, and what was that like for you in terms of dealing with trauma and abuse and all the things you had to see out on the road? It was very difficult. I was raised in a very close-knit, strong, faith-oriented community. I was a strong believer and in a lot of ways very naive. Mm-hmm. I know that I was not very naive. But, got out and you jump right into a big city like Lexington and you work patrol and you see things and are a part of things you never could have imagined that people do to each other. And it was extremely difficult mentally. Emotionally, struggle with depression, anxiety at times. Mm-hmm. Not anything I would, maybe define as abnormal, but it was very challenging. The job itself is a high-paced job. It's very structured, very militaristic. So you've got a lot of pressure from the inside to make sure everything's lined up just right. Yeah. And in the meantime, you're juggling all these horrible things that you're seeing in society. So, I didn't really. I see it more now that I'm out, but it was very, very, very difficult as a first responder, almost 18 years. Yeah. Yeah, and I know that you had your faith as kind of a foundation for you during that time. Tell me how that sort of helped you with your job. It was everything. I don't know how, there's plenty of first responders that aren't believers, and I don't know how they do it. For me, it was kind of the constant reminder of, we live in a fallen world. And evil exists, and we wouldn't know good if evil wasn't alive and prevalent. So, I did grow in my faith. I was a strong, godly kid coming out of high school and out of college. Mm-hmm. And I grew a lot. I saw a lot of things, and there was some questioning of God. What in the world? How does this stuff exist? I had, the vile hate, the cruelty that police officers, firefighters, first responders in general see. It's tough to digest, but having a strong faith, knowing that ultimately God was in control, it obviously got me through it. Yeah, and I relied on Him greatly.
Yeah. So you were going along, moving up the ranks. You were married and have 2 sons, and one of your sons became ill. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I had been on the department about 13 years, 14 years-ish, and my oldest son had gone through a long battle. Just a lot of things going on, some pain in his leg, sickness, fevers, and we had gone to the doctor again and again and again. And to take a long story and make it real short, he was diagnosed with a metastatic Ewing sarcoma, which is a very bad cancer, to put it in layman's terms. It rocked us. It rocked me. It rocked the community. It was more than even what you describe, I guess, as a punch in the face. It shook my faith. At first, when we were first confronted with it and the diagnosis and the plan, and his chances of survival were very, very, very slim at first. I took that step and said, God's going to use it. This is going to be a great thing. You've seen people do that with injuries, with illnesses, with tragic things. And I thought, we're going to do that. We're going to glorify the Lord in this. And, that was my approach at first. It was very effective for many months. It was very effective. We got to do a lot of things, got to go a lot of places, meet a lot of people, and share the gospel and just share what it looks like as a believer to deal with pain and deal with something that's not expected, something that you didn't cause. Having something happen to your child is like one of the worst things all of us as parents could ever want or imagine. And so it was a really neat thing at first.
Yeah. But then,
once the dust settled, and he went through a lot of treatment and surgeries, and major surgeries, and he came through it, and he survived. It was miraculous. It was the Lord's hand was in it, and he healed him. And after about 10 months of treatment, he was declared cancer-free. The doctors were completely baffled. That was not expected in the least. Still had a long road ahead of him, and there was a thought that would come back. But once the dust settled, we got into 2019, year and a half, and I watched him, and he's, for lack of a better term, he's crippled. He can walk, and he's fine, but he has an artificial femur, an artificial hip.
Yeah. Can't
Can't play any sports. And he was a big sports kid. He loved sports, still does.
Yeah.
But he was very involved in sports. It was, and that became, I don't know if it was an idol, but my ex-wife and I were big sports people. We both played in college, so sports were everything. But there came a time when I developed this anger. Once the dust settled, this anger towards God. How in the world can you allow this to happen? I've grown up. I've done all the right things. You've been a good guy. You've had a great integrity. You're involved in your church. You're a deacon in one of your churches, whatever. Leading others to Christ, going on missions trips, and always doing what's right. And then God's going to let this happen to you.
Yeah.
It made me. I began to question. I began to question everything, and even reached out to you at the time, and you kind of guided me back on the right path, which is you attempted to guide me back on the right path, but I allowed that anger to fester.
Yeah.
And ultimately chose, this thing ain't working out for me. This faith, and I didn't believe in, I hate to use the word health and wealth. I didn't believe that, you can do all these right things and God's going to just, make your life great. But subliminally, I did believe that.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'm going to start doing what I want to do. And I started to drink to deal with some emotions. I hadn't drank through all the law enforcement stuff. I hadn't drank at all. Hadn't used that, but I started to drink, went right to bourbon. And what started as a little bit, alcoholism runs in my family. My mom's side, my grandfather was an alcoholic. My mother was an alcoholic. But the alcoholism grew quickly. And it really grabbed a foothold in my life. Yeah. And my morals started to just kind of unwind, just slowly unwind. And I thought, okay, this alcohol thing's great. I'm going to do what I want to do next. I'm going to find somebody else I'm going to reach outside of this marriage, and I'm going to hook up, with another woman.
Yeah.
And that's what I jumped into, full force. Didn't really try to hide it. It broke my kids' hearts. But I jumped into that full force, complete adultery. I was a complete alcoholic, and then really spiraled downhill. I can get into that if you want me to.
Yeah. So it escalated. You found yourself apart from your family, your wife, from God, drinking heavily, anxious, depressed, sad, and it wound up with you being pulled over on the side of the road, drunk, right?
It did, yeah.
Tell us about that night or that day that happened.
The one thing that I kept solid was my job through all that, through the alcoholism, through the adultery. Essentially, I lost custody of my boys because of my actions, and moved in and ultimately married this other woman. And my home life, my personal life was a disaster. My kids didn't want to be with me. They'd probably tell you at the time they hated me. But I kept my job going. I actually, during that time, I kind of promoted up to be the Crime Stoppers coordinator, one of the spokesmen for the department. I would go before the city council and sometimes the news media and discuss things and talk and spoke for the chief. So I was rising and doing well at the occupation. It was almost like all this good stuff at your work kind of continued on a little bit. But I'm not even sure all the details that happened that day. I was in a verbal altercation with the ex-wife at the time, and decided to get in the car and drive. I don't know why I did, but drive intoxicated. And I pulled over on the side of the road, Interstate 64, and who better to find me than my Lexington guys? And they did what was the right thing. Was they arrested me and took me to jail. And my anger was through the roof when I was put in handcuffs. And I got down there, and that door slammed shut. I was so mad. I remember the door slamming shut at the jail and just thinking, I hate you. God, I hate you. And I'm going to keep going, digging this as far as I can, run as far away from you as I can.
Yeah. And even then, you sort of laid there and were not ready. That was not rock bottom for you, was it?
It wasn't rock bottom.
You weren't ready to get some help or to stop drinking even then. You were released, and you said you went out and tried to find some alcohol, right?
I was booked and was in a cell for several hours and got out, went straight home with no license, and drove to the liquor store and bought a great big fifth of bourbon and drank it all night long. I had no desire to get help or need anything. But that's when some relentless friends stepped in.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was extremely intoxicated, so there's a lot of it's a little bit fuzzy and hazy. But into that next day, I had a court appearance. I had an attorney go and appear for me. But a lot of detectives and officers came to the house, and I tried to fight them. And
you ran away, right?
I ran away. I was unclothed, running on the golf course.
Yeah. Wow.
And did a great job eluding them. They didn't catch me out there.
Naked guy on the golf course.
I know, 6'7" too, right?
Right.
But ultimately, it was Georgetown PD and the Lexington guys that put me in handcuffs again. I wasn't arrested, but I was considered a danger to myself.
Yeah.
And they took me to Good Samaritan, where I went to detox. And I went through detox, and it was horrible, and I was there for 3 or 4 days. And got out and still didn't have a desire to go to do anything. But my guys were there at the house when I got out, and my attorney, and they said, you can go to this place in Nashville, Tennessee for rehab. And I think that showing that you're on the right track and want to better yourself will help with your DUI, and maybe keep your job. You get a shot. If you don't, it's done. And I said, absolutely not. But ultimately, I still had a lot of medication in my system. They talked me into getting into a car, drove me to Scott County Airport, and a couple of gentlemen flew me on a jet down to Nashville, Tennessee. And it was there it was day 3 or day 4 that I really started to break down. The peeling the onion apart. And it was in a chapel service that we had, where someone was sharing up top, and I forget which translation of the Bible that it is, talking about the story of the prodigal son, but said the father was out looking and saw the son coming back home. We all know the story of the prodigal son, right? Mm-hmm. Said the father was out looking for the son, and saw him coming home and ran to embrace him. And it was in that moment I broke. The first break came through. Mm-hmm. And I said, Lord, I've messed up so bad. I've dug myself a hole that I'll never be able to get out. And he comforted me in that moment in a mighty way, and decided that I wanted forgiveness. I wanted, full redemption, and it began a process. It wasn't an overnight thing, but it began a process, and I can get into that too, if you want me to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I would love for you to talk about your recovery, because, the absence of drinking is one thing, but recovery and sobriety, that's the work, right? That's the work. So talk to us about the work that you've done since your time in rehab there, that you, how have you changed?
Yeah, I shouldn't say we all, because some people have no idea what this term is, dry drunk. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's one thing to just stop the drink and not drink, mm-hmm. and move forward, but you're still struggling with all this stuff. That anger that I had and those questions was still there. Mm-hmm. It still existed, but there was an overwhelming, he reached out, and just an overwhelming feeling of love and compassion for me. And that, we all know the story of Job too, and he questioned God and was frustrated with him. But when I got back, all those emotions were still alive, and I wasn't drinking. But I was given help. My guys found me a tiny little apartment, kind of in the hood in Georgetown, to stay in. Mm-hmm. It was a walking distance of my AA meetings. Mm-hmm. I had somebody come and take me to outpatient rehab in Lexington. Mm-hmm. And that's where you walk through all the steps of not just putting the alcohol down, but dealing with your emotions, dealing with your questions, your frustrations, your anxiety, mm-hmm. And depression. And I still had so much of that going on, so much of it was present. And a lot was unknown. I knew that I couldn't go back to law enforcement. I was really pushed to do that, but I did not believe that I could do that and stay sober. It was just too much. So I made the decision to kind of take an early retirement and walk away from that, which was a great decision. Life was still very, very hard for me. Mm-hmm. I worked, sold insurance kind of mm-hmm. over the phone kind of thing, but the process, I had some wonderful godly men just come over and sit with me. Mm-hmm. Some men in my church just come sit. My pastor poured into me, and they just listened. Did a phenomenal job of just listening to me. Mm-hmm. And I grew in my faith. I think it was you, Blake, that said, I think that, Anthony, you're going to find that there was this whole other side of God that you didn't know, or maybe you even said you're going to see, your faith is going to change. And that was so true. I had to understand that, really understand that, our best, I don't know if it's Isaiah, I think it's Isaiah, where, our best is filthy rags. Our best effort's filthy rags. Mm-hmm. That's your best effort, is the reward is filthy rags. You can't earn it. You can't earn his love. You can't earn great things happening to you, good things happen to you, him taking care of you. We've all fallen short. Whether you're committing a murder, adultery, stealing, struggling, whatever you've done, we've all fallen short mm-hmm. Of him. And there's nothing you can do to kind of earn his favor. Yeah. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. How do you deal with guilt in your life? You and I have talked a fair amount about this over the years, but looking back, you have sons that mm-hmm. you hurt then. You had an ex-wife that you hurt, and you did some things that were hurtful and very damaging to people. And so how do you deal with shame, guilt, thinking about those actions that you did? Where do those go for you?
To be completely honest, that's why we're here, right? To be straightforward. That's still at times a struggle a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I've come a long way. Obviously, you're going to carry guilt as a father if you hurt your kids, your actions. But You have to understand there's consequences for your actions, right?
Mm-hmm.
You may be forgiven, you may be loved, and brought back in, but there's still some consequences for your actions. However, coming back into my boys' lives and just living day in and day out for the Lord and being steady for them, my relationship with them has grown in ways I never could have imagined it would have for Levi and Colton. I'm closer with them now than I ever have been. But you have to let the guilt go from your decisions. It's sinful to cling on to guilt. It's almost like you don't think God's big enough to forgive you of that. Like he can do this and that, but he can't forgive you these past actions that you did, no matter what those are. And you kind of have to flush that, understand that he's a God that can wipe it clean, and it's gone. And he will use it. He will use it for his glory.
Yeah. I think that's wonderful. I think your story, the reason I wanted you to come here today is to tell your story. It's powerful. And, there are a couple of groups of people that I want you to speak to directly as we kind of wrap up here. One are, maybe someone who is struggling with addiction of any kind and sort of sees themselves where you were, 4 years ago or so. What would you say to them?
There is a way out. You're not at rock bottom. You think about, the place that I was, there really was no way out, but there is a way out. Those feelings you're having of depression and anxiety, and seeing no end, there is a way out, and there's the God that loves you right where you are, right in that moment, right in that place you're sitting right now. He loves you immensely, more than we can imagine, and all he wants you to do is just lean on him, and he will guide you. He will guide you. Obviously, you hear everybody say, "Get help, get help," but it's so much bigger than that. But to reach out, the AA was great for me. I still pop into AA every once in a while. I love the people in AA. But there's so many different ways, and I'm not sure if that's something you're going to share or not. Like, there's so many different programs and things out there and ways to reach out to get help that aren't extremely expensive or maybe expensive at all. Some of it's free.
Yeah. So hope. Somewhere along the line, you found hope. You're a pretty stubborn guy.
Extremely.
You were an athlete.
Yeah.
You're a big guy. You're stubborn, and I think the stubbornness has helped you in parts of your life, and in other parts, it's been very it's delayed your growth some, right?
Absolutely.
So I hear this sense of just sort of laying down. That's the first step in
surrender,
AA, right?
We
surrender.
Not most of it, all of it.
Yeah.
The greatest place that you can be, the greatest place in the world, is in the Lord's will and where he wants you, and leaning on him, and complete surrender in that. God, I'm going to give up all these feelings, all these things I've done, what all is going through. I'm just going to give it up and give it to you, and complete surrender in that. There is a massive hope in that, and restoration.
Yeah, and the other group I wanted you to talk to are the therapists that watch this podcast. If they're working with somebody like you, what advice do you give them?
This is great. Stay the course. Oh my gosh. And I know, we want to be limited to how much we go into this, but there's no way that, if I was my own therapist, I would have given up way long time ago. And that's a story for another whole other podcast. I think that what me and you went through, and even my anger towards you, Blake, at times, and try to push you away. But there, speaking to therapists, there is hope for every single person that you're dealing with. And I think, Blake, you're definitely testimony to that. I think you'd be very quick to raise your hand and say, yeah, I didn't think Anthony was going to come around. You probably hoped, and you obviously saw me, but to therapists, if they're alive and breathing and they're in front of you, there's hope.
Yeah.
There's hope.
Yeah.
God's power is miraculous.
Yeah.
Just to add one more thing, he has restored my life in so many ways. People sometimes, just in my own experience with some of these folks that are struggling, they think, well, I'll never get this back. I'm going to lose custody of my kids. And this is where I was at, lose custody of my kids, and, this marriage and all this money that you have and everything, and I'll never be able to restore that. And sometimes those things aren't restored and completely. But, just want to touch at the very, like I said earlier, my relationship with my wife is 10 times better. I found a woman that I didn't know existed that walks alongside me and is absolutely phenomenal from every aspect of my life. And God did that when he found her for me, and he's mended my relationship with the boys. The restoration has been phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, Anthony, I'm so thank you for coming here this morning, first of all, and I'm proud of you. I'm thankful for you. I've been a therapist almost 30 years now, and as I look back, there are some people that have slipped away and have just gone that I don't know what's happened to them. I may hear about them, or they may have died or whatever, and I'm just so grateful that you're alive, that you're doing well, that you're that you're working still on your receiving grace and living in that, and that's really cool. That inspires me. It inspires me to keep doing this work. So thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Well, and I know you're humble, Blake, but you go back to the therapist. I've told you this numerous times. You were that lighthouse for me, even in my anger towards you at times, and you probably thought I was hopeless. You were always there for me, Blake. And I've told you this, and I know you're going to be like, oh, he's not supposed to say this part. Why is he talking like this? But just the other therapist has some encouragement. And I've told you, if you don't have any effect on anybody else, you got a massive crowns in heaven for what you've done to save my life. And just your persistence. You could have easily quit, and I think everybody would have been like, yeah, I get it. I mean, Blake needs to step away from this guy, but you didn't. Yeah. And you're one of the very main reasons that I'm here today and over 3 years sober.
Oh, that's wonderful. You're going to make me cry on my podcast. Wow. Well, what a way to end. This has been the Guided Podcast. Thank you so much for traveling with us. Take good care.